light's on now. No, it isn't. Yeah. Like,
Green.
yeah, I'm in the green, yeah.
Blow it.
There it is. Sorry I didn't get back to you. I didn't get in until late.
No, I actually didn't get back till late. Don't worry about it. We already talked about it.
Go, we have one request to speak so far.
All right, thank you. Yep. Okay, the meeting come to order. First order of business will be the agenda approval.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the agenda, but I would like to take item 9 off the consent agenda and move it to a regular item.
That's fine.
Fine,
I'll second that.
we'll make it item number, leave it as 9.
Yeah, just off the consent.
The, I'll second the agenda change. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Report on the closed session.
The board did meet in closed session to confer with its real property negotiator under item 1, and there was a delegation of some settlement authority to the general manager with regard to property acquisitions. Under item 2, the Alfred and Judy Rogers parcel was removed from the agenda. Beyond that, no action was taken on the Rogers 2007 trust or the Lacombe property. And as to the balance of the properties identified, the board did authorize increased offers. Under closed session agenda item 3, the board met with legal counsel, and the board authorized an increased offer on the Culbreth parcel. The Silva Trust item was removed from the agenda. And no action was taken on the balance of the properties referenced under agenda item 3 on the closed session agenda. That's it.
Thank you, Jim. The public comment on matters not on the agenda. I have one request for speech, and that's from Kim McDonald.
I've been speaking with my neighbors, and once again, I've always told you that I would like to be kept updated on the timeline as far as your actions upon my house. I received a vague notification through my lawyer that I would be expected to move in early spring of this year. 2 of my other neighbors have been given much more detailed information, and so far I've received absolutely no clue from you guys. But my neighbors have been told April 15th, and the other one was told April, and this was before the Thanksgiving holidays. They had already received this information. BRI called me the other night, and speaking about how negotiations are going on in my house, I have always said I want to relocate to a specific area, and their big thing is there are no houses for sale in that area. I've already missed out on 2 houses that have come up for sale on South River Road. One of the most recent ones to sell, you could fit the whole square footage of the house in this room, and it sold on 3 acres, like my property, for as much as you people have offered me. The only money that I can get contact with is the low appraisal that you have given me originally. Your people that work for BRI or whoever is doing this have said that this is not enough money for my house. They say that was the appraised value. This money makes up for relocation, bringing it up to current market value. But I cannot purchase a house using that funds at this time. I would have to go out, an unemployed single woman, over 60, finding finances to come up to the amount that I would need to purchase the 2 houses that I've found that have not quite gone on the market. One of the houses is actually not going to be up for sale for 3 years, and it's going to be going for $1.5 million. It is the only one that has garages, shops, and a barn, which I currently have the same amount of square footage as all that put together. That is a third more than what you have offered me even. I cannot wait around to buy that property because in the meantime, I would be having to go to from the funds that you have given me, paying rent, paying other things, my living expenses out of that money. And so that house is totally out of my current range. The other house is just a house with a grandmother's apartment, no barn, no storage, no shop, and it is selling for more than the amount of money that you've offered me, and it was built in the 60s and needs to be totally redone because it's knob and tube wiring and galvanized pipe plumbing. I don't understand how you think this is fair compensation for my home, and I really wish you people would look into it because Palmadesi's essentially gave you 5 acres of ground. Yes, they got a comparable house, but you didn't pay them nothing for their property.
Kim, I will get back with you personally on this, okay? Let's see. Approval of the November the 12th, 2015 and December the 10th, 2015 minutes.
Move approval?
Second?
Been moved and seconded that the minutes be approved. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Review of our monthly year-to-date. You know, finances must be in trouble. Okay.
Still healthy, in fact. Good morning, Mr. President, members of the board. This report is for November 2015. The agency started the month with a balance, a combined balance of $12.2 million. Received a little bit of revenue from the zero land value flood assessments, about $40,000, and some miscellaneous interest revenue. Expenses for the month total $338,000. Most of the activity was in the Southport project with payments for the boss, constructability review, and various hard and soft costs for land acquisition. There was some follow-up work in hardware projects as well. Agency finished the month at $11.9 million, and we're expecting in the next 4 to 5 weeks an $8.2 million payment from the state related to the execution of the construction planning agreement. And sometime this week or next week or so, we should be getting the first installment of the 2016 flood assessment, which should be around $2 million. That concludes the report for November 2015.
Questions?
No, not on this, no.
Questions? Thank you very much. Yeah, consent agenda.
Mr. President, there is a modification in the staff report for agenda item 8, which is the Tremaine and Associates contract. And the change from the staff report that's in the packet is the contract amount is now $238,923, with corresponding changes in the authority granted to the general manager to go beyond.
Thank you. Got it. We're going to jump down here to,
Well, we need to,
Well, I got a question on 7.
okay.
The question I have is on 7? Okay. Hi, Phil.
Hey, good morning.
Hey, the question I have is, we also received a letter with the flood control docket, or whatever you want to call it,
The CAFR.
yeah. And it talks about deficiency in internal control. What are they talking about?
Brian Nash is our auditor, so I will have him address the specific
Okay, great.
question.
Hi, Brian.
Good morning. As part of the audit, one of the things we're supposed to do is report to the board anything that we found during the audit that the auditing accounting standard setters say we are supposed to report to you. This finding in the management letter is related to just entries that we had to help management come up with to close out the books to make sure that the financial statements were reported in accordance with general accepted accounting principles. So there were some of the closing entries, it says in the letter some of those things that we found. So there were a few closing entries that weren't accrued the way they should have been to report the financial statements in accordance with general accepted accounting principles. And the audit standards say if we have to assist with those types of entries, we have to report it to the governing body. So that's what that letter is doing. So it's really not an unusual comment for a governmental entity. The accounting for governments is really complicated. So it's fairly common to have that finding a few of the closing entries that they needed assistance with. So that's what that comment is about.
Yeah,
Does that answer your question?
But our finance department they're top-notch, and I'm trying to figure out, we've never had this before, and, Phil's.
I think this had a lot to, we have a large amount of debt, and it's very complicated to do all the financing properly and in a timely manner. And so we did a lot of refinancings, as you know.
Yeah.
And so as we're doing the paperwork, it's not unusual that the auditors will come in and they will, they'll help us, or they'll move some stuff around to, get everything accounted. There's no money that's lost. There's no risk really
Right.
of money being lost. It's really it's getting stuff done correctly in a timely manner. It's not, as Brian has indicated, it's not an unusual finding. We work with him to improve every year, to do it better next year than we did last year.
Okay, thank you.
Before you leave,
Yep, absolutely.
on the audit itself, there's a section in here that, on page 5, I have a question on, and this is a readability type of thing. In other words, I want to be able to understand and follow what transpires from page 1 to page 25 and so on, without flipping back and forth all the time. And down here it says general fund and the debt service funds and the special revenue fund and the capital project funds. Those are covered by a number. When you go over into the audit itself, you do not apply the number, you apply the fund name. And so that's fine. Then I look at the audit, or the financial statement that we received from the city, and it shows the number, and it gives me all of the details, and it's very common, or easy to, I should say, to follow. So in the future, I would like to find out if you could apply that number wherever you apply the agenda fund name, okay?
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
Okay.
Fine, if you like this to
And
be-
then I also have another one while both of you are standing there. And this may be taking this out of order a little bit, but I'm gonna do it anyhow. The funds or the monies that we have that are being collected by the city. The in lieu fees and stuff like that, which are earmarked to go to levy improvement. Those monies are held by the city. The city is accountable for them. But couldn't we have a note or something within our audit that stipulates what those amounts are at the time of the audit?
I will, I'll let Brian answer from the accounting standpoint, but the in lieu fees and the Measure V are city funds, and so that's
I
where they,
realize they're
that's where they
city
need to be
funds at this
accounted.
time, but they're to be used
Sure.
for that, for flood control. And so that's what I want to know is that, if,
Well, let
for
me,
us to be able to look at our finances, we have to be able to draw on where our monies are located so that we can get them.
Let me just talk about there's a concept in the reporting standards, reporting entity. And the city is a different reporting entity from the flood control agency. So we put everything in the flood control agency financial statements that's related to this reporting entity. I understand that there's the flood, I understand that that's become an issue, the flood in lieu fees. There's no prohibition to putting information in the flood control CAFR related to those in lieu fees. What we'd say about it, I think, would be kind of, it'd be hard to come up with an appropriate way to describe those. It sounds like there may be some sort of an issue related to how the two different sides think those fees should be
Well, when we sit
spent.
down and have a discussion, and we discuss
Yes.
our finances and stuff, we'd like to discuss all of our finances
Understand that.
and the potential of the finances that would be coming in off of other sources. And maybe what I should be asking is that the city send us a copy of the in lieu fee section of the thing and do that.
Yes, President Denton, as I indicated to the board in December, and as we'll get to later, we agreed that we would provide you with the historical uses, and then we will come back to you every quarter and provide that information. My staff meets with Mark Zollo and Greg on a bi-weekly, sometimes weekly basis to go through all of the finances, including obviously any bonds that we would issue, any flood in lieu fees. So you receive that information at your board meeting from Mr. Zollo, and I will continue to come back on a quarterly basis and provide you with, an update on Measure V, flood in lieu, so that you know exactly how much money we have, how much has come in, what it's been spent on. We can put it as a footnote, but it is a trust and agency fund of the city. So it has to, by his accounting standards, their profession, it has to be in the city's CAFR. But as he said, we can put we can try to figure out some sort of footnote or something to put in to the flood CAFR.
Well, maybe it would be better if we just got it from our accounting.
Sure, and we work together on that, so we provide that to Mark all
So
the
we
time.
could get that on a quarterly basis directly from you then.
Absolutely. I'm gonna provide it on a quarterly basis to you.
Thank you I'm sorry to bring that up at this time, but thank you very much. Like you say, we'll discuss that a little bit later on in the meeting.
With all that, I'd move for approval of the consent agenda items 6, 7, and 8 as revised.
I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded that the revised agenda be on items 6, 7, and 8 be changed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Item number 9.
Good morning, President Denton and members of the board. I'll just provide a brief summary of this particular item, which is the consideration to enter into a memorandum of agreement with a variety of agencies in the Neolo and Solano County for the purposes of participating in the Sacramento River Flood Control Project General Reevaluation Report. So I think as the board is aware, right now, the state and the Corps are embarking on a reevaluation of the Sacramento River Flood Control Project. The footprint of this project also touches within the Yolo bypass and is obviously of interest to WSAFCA and a number of other agencies in Yolo County and Solano County that have interests both from ecosystem, habitat, and flood control within that footprint. As an offshoot of the regional flood management planning group, the agencies got together and discussed having a seat at the table and a voice to participate in this general reevaluation report. So an effort was put together to figure out how we best could do that, and it was decided that one of the ways that we could do that would be the formation of this group, this memorandum of understanding, to elect one agency that could represent the group, and that would then petition the Corps and the state to become an additional non-federal sponsor in that project study. And so that's what we've done, and that's what we're bringing before you. The agencies are listed. WSAFCA is one of them. WSAFCA was elected by the agencies to represent the group in the entering into the cost share agreement with the Corps as an additional non-federal sponsor, and whatever additional local cost share agreement with the state, we would also represent the group with that as well. Now, this general evaluation report falls under the 3x3x3 guidelines from the Corps: no longer than 3 years, no more than $3 million, and no more than 3 inches of report. And so there is a cap on what the financial contribution would be. How that would be divvied up is outlined in the report. I won't go through all of the details of that, but as this is represented here, the WSAFCA's maximum financial contribution through that effort would be about $175,000. There would be a team, an executive committee that would be formed under the MOA that would consist of representatives from each of the from the participating agencies. So the board would elect or designate a representative to be part of the executive committee, and then there would be staff level engagement with the Corps, and we would report to the executive committee. So that's kind of the framework on how that's being proposed, and but this is still all subject to the Corps and the state agreeing to add the group as an additional non-federal sponsor. So what we're asking for the board today is to designate authority to the general manager to approve, to enter into the memorandum of agreement insubstantially as to the form contained here, subject to any minor amendments that would be approved by the WSAFCA Council, so that we can execute that memorandum and then be ready to enter, to join the state and the Corps in that study process. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. I either confused you or didn't explain enough.
Any questions?
No, I got a few comments to add to that too. I think this is important for our overall, flood protection goals here in West Sacramento and the region as a whole. And this has kind of been an outgrowth of our participation in the regional effort that's more of a state portion, where we have been the lead agency as far as management as well. But what this, this GRR that's begun with the Corps and the state will touch some of our areas here. So we need to be involved in the process. And just my recent trip to Washington, when we went through the Civil Works Review Board process and had our GRR approved, I saw the importance of having strong local sponsors. And at this point, with just the state and the Corps involved, we're distanced from that. And I think ourselves getting involved, along with the other agencies, is even better, because then, I know one of the questions that was brought up by the folks back in Washington, D.C., is, does this bring, full flood protection to the area? And it was explained that no, our GRR and the common features that SAFCA had approved were incremental steps. And they were very concerned that we see the full thing happen. And that's what this next process is. And if we can be involved here, we're gonna be beneficial to make this thing go through and see a third GRR approved for the region. So I'm fully supportive of our participation. I think it's gonna be money well spent.
No, not really. I think Tommy's right. The folks back in Washington, they want to see a total project. But at the same time, we at WSAFCA, we're trying to take care of West Sacramento. Sacramento is trying to take care of, or SAFCA in Sacramento is trying to take care of Sacramento. And I think it is healthy to have these other agencies or other flood control districts, or whatever you want to call them, working together, because that is just going to go a long way to allow the Corps to raise their comfort level and have these GRRs move through. I just get a little concerned that it takes, the 333. I mean, it seems that we could, it really seems that we could expedite these different issues and things, but, hey, it is what it is, and for whatever reason, at least we're taking a step in the right direction to get something done from a regional perspective, and I think that's healthy.
I agree with both of you. I think it eliminates a lot of confusion, to have one group handle it.
Yeah.
So I'll need a motion to participate in the Sacramento River Flood Control Project, a general evaluation report process.
And did you make the motion, or are you asking for a motion?
I'm asking for a motion.
I'll make the motion that
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Let's see. We have no public hearing. Regular agenda item. Item number 10 is a presentation of financial data for the Measure V and flood in lieu funds. The item provides an update to the board on historical sources and uses of the Measure V funds and flood in lieu fee fund from inception through November 2015.
Good morning, President Denton, members of the board. As promised in December, I have provided the board with historical sources, the amounts and the uses of the city Measure V and flood in lieu fees. Excuse me. On Tuesday of this week, the city attorney and I met with the WSAFCA attorney, Mr. Day. He expressed some of the board's concerns about some of the uses of the flood in lieu fees, and we have agreed that we will bring those concerns back to the city council on February 3rd and present options such as reclassifying the flood in lieu money used for Village Parkway to a loan from the flood in lieu fund to the traffic fund to be repaid by traffic impact fees, and raise those issues with the council. That's my report.
Okay, just curious if you were going to go into some of the items on the, on the report itself, but it's here.
Yeah, I provided you the information.
Yep.
I'm not going to go into the details of each of those because I'm probably not the right person on some of them.
Okay.
But again, we will go back to the council on February 3rd, and the concerns that have been raised on your behalf from Mr. Day will be brought to the council's attention, and we'll go from there. And I will come back quarterly, as I've said, with updates on how these monies are being used.
Well, the item number 10, one of the problems that I have is that under the initial agreement that we have, it's, those items of in lieu fees were collected for flood control for a 200-year levee system. And that some of these fees are, as you have pointed out, were used, you're going to reimburse the fund with those, right? Is that correct?
So the decisions on these fees are made by the city council.
Okay.
And so I will go back to the city council, and I will let the city council know the concerns of this board. The city council will direct me as to what to do. In our conversations with Mr. Day, we discussed that we would support requesting that they consider reclassifying it, but that's a council decision, not my decision.
Well, then I would hope that you would also mention the interpretation that I have anyhow, is that in lieu fees were for a flood 200-year protection, which means levees. It doesn't mean, in my opinion, it does not mean storm drains and that sort of thing. It's strictly a levee type of operation.
That will be communicated, absolutely.
And if the city wishes to use this money for a 200-year, the funds to improve your drainage system, does that mean that you guys are going to improve all of the drainage system throughout Sacramento, West Sacramento, 530, or all of 900 and Broderick and Bright and whatnot? If you are, I'd like to know where in the heck you're going to get the money to do that.
Yeah, I think that the discussions at the staff level, and Mr. Kristoff can speak for the council, but on the staff level has been that obviously we can't fix one part of the storm drain system without fixing all of it. They're connected. And we know that the money that we have in flood in lieu is not going to be close to the amount of money we're going to need to do the fixes. We're talking about having a full report done to analyze all of the system, and we would work with the other agencies to try to be economical and not have 3 different studies going on. Let's have one study on all the storm drain, and then we'll figure out what needs to be done and the cost, and then we're going to have to figure out how to pay for it. And there's a lengthy process, I suspect.
So are you saying that how this storm drain is going to be funded hasn't been entirely decided yet?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The council has identified some money for a study to determine, and as you know, there's usually, you're gonna hire an outside consultant, they're gonna come in, they're gonna do a study, they're gonna tell you everything that's right and everything that's wrong, and what needs to be done, and how much it's gonna cost. Yeah, that's sort of step one. Then you have to figure out, okay, how are we gonna pay for that? And I suspect there's gonna be a fee study on a storm drain fee, but that we'll have to do at some point. Unless, we have an EIFD, as I think you know, the city is in the process of forming an EIFD, which is an infrastructure financing district. That may be the source of paying for the storm drain, because it certainly fits within the types of projects you would use an EIFD funds for. But we do not have a source, and we don't actually know the extent of the problem and how much it's gonna cost to fix.
Are there any monies that are collected in development, projects that would be earmarked towards drainage type things, or are they specific to that individual project, or
Yeah,
is
they're
there-
a specific project at this point. We do not have a storm drain fee, impact fee at this point.
Okay.
Well, I certainly would like to thank staff for being here today to raise our comfort level as far as some of the expenditures, and to move forward with, these future meetings with WSAFCA as far as talking about drainage and how they relate to flood issues. There was an issue that it seems like it's resolved. We've got a loan process going in place that WSAFCA is going to be made whole through that process. And I would just like to thank Phil for all the work that you've been doing on this, because I know you and I have had quite a few conversations, and so, but I mean, I'm glad to see that the partnership between WSAFCA and the city is as strong as ever. And so I think that is something that is very, very important.
Thank you. Lessons learned. You always learn lessons in life, and capital improvement programs are large programs with a 2-page staff report and a 50-page exhibit. And so we've learned lessons in this, how to make sure we communicate better. And like you say, this is a partnership. As Mr. Christoph knows, the number one item for 9 years has been flood protection from the city's perspective. It's obviously your mission. So we're on the same page trying to get this done, and we'll continue to do a better job communicating.
Well, Bill, I'd like to make a few comments, especially since you're going to go back to the council. And it's some of it's a little personal, and I gotta I guess first start out to say I'm a little embarrassed that I wasn't really aware of what the in lieu fee was being used for. I've been here probably about a couple of years on this board now, and looking at these financials, and we've been discussing Measure V funds to be brought in at the right time, and I've always kind of thought, well, the in lieu fee's there as our safety valve, and a little naive, but I thought it was all in a lockbox.
Still is.
Well, no, it's not in a lockbox. And I thought when the time came that it was needed, that we would be able to access that. But that being said, it's a little different, and I really appreciate you coming and bringing this forward. And we've had discussions on the Village Parkway, so and that's going to be worked out. And I have some issues on the storm drain that I hope when we have this discussion further, we can go down the line. But we kind of lump Measure V and in lieu fee together, and I think they're two different animals.
I agree.
The Measure V, that was a sales tax increase. There was an advisory vote that the public gave direction to the council, but that's general fund money. The in lieu fee, when it was presented, back when we also had the assessment, I mean, the people of West Sacramento made decision at the time, and the folks that put it together, that was going to be two components. It was going to be an assessment and an in lieu, and it was developed, that was a fair way to do it. We shouldn't, put too much burden on the current property owners, and there should be a way to have the people that are causing new impacts to pay their fair share too. But it was presented to all of us as for flood protection. And it even says in all of the stuff I've seen, for levees. And so, we can, and then, we moved on from there, and the money's been collected, and it's been used. And when I see this here in the report, and I'm not saying any of this stuff was used in the wrong manner. A lot of it was used for Ford stuff, but it was never in our books, like Bill mentioned earlier. And so we need to find a way maybe to bring that in. And, probably guess the other thing I'd say, you go back when this was put together in 2000, 2007, 2008, WSAFCA was, it was there, it was an entity, but it was more of a shell entity. We've matured since then. We've come a long ways, and we've taken on the responsibility of the flood protection projects. And we are a team, and we've been a good team, but sometimes the roles in those teams change. And I think we need to discuss that as we go down the road, whether with the council or the two staffs together, and to see if, I think I myself would like to see WSAFCA have more a role in the uses of those in lieu fees. And, hopefully we can get there.
Sure.
So.
Well, as you know, I want to make sure that this board understands that the flood in lieu fee is a city fee, it's a trusted agency fund, and so if this board wants it in their CAFR, we have to go back to council. We can't simply just do it. It's a city fund, and we can say that you've requested it. I don't think it's going to be a problem, but we will do that as part of the process.
Okay.
And I think your suggestion that we need to continue to talk to each other, boards and councils and staff, to make sure everybody understands their roles and how it works is a fantastic suggestion, because it has been 8 years and everybody's moving along, and sometimes roles get confused. So it's a good thing to maybe have a joint get-together where we can clarify and everybody understands who's doing what. I think we all know it's the number one item. Everything else on the list underneath the flood protection doesn't happen if we don't have flood protection. The council knows that, staff knows that. Again, when I met with you in December, I said I would do a catch-up and then I would come to you quarterly, so you're gonna know exactly how every penny's spent, and if you think it's wrong, you'll be able to express that to the council.
Very good.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. WSAFCA project updates.
Thank you, President Dedden. I'll just go through some of the highlights from the monthly program updates. As Mark mentioned earlier in the state funding agreements, we've executed the construction funding agreement for the project. The state has processed some true-up payments as we can move to that new construction funding agreement, and so we're expecting that $8.2 million payment in the next 5 to 6 weeks or so. For the Southport project, from the finalizing the environmental permits, the section 404, the stream bed alteration agreement permit, and the 401 permit, these permit applications have all been finalized, and there should be, I think we're cutting the checks as we speak for the permit applications, and those should go out the end of this week or early next to the respective agencies to start those formal reviews by the agencies, and then permit issuance in the spring. On real estate, staff received some comments from the DWR Real Estate Division on our revised real estate plan. And that would happen just before the Christmas holiday. Staff has scheduled a meeting with DWR so that we can discuss the comments and the proposed responses. And in support of that, staff has met with Mark Thompson Company staff to review the comments received and then develop an approach that we can present to the real estate folks at DWR to try and close those out and get that real estate plan approved. The real estate plan approval is necessary so that we can start the cost sharing with the state on the property transactions. It's a real important part of that process. The Board of Senior Consultants review meeting was held on the 100% design in December, on December 10th. We've done response to comments received during that process. We're in the process of closing those out. And the actual formal closeout of those comments are going to occur through the back check of the 100% design submittal that is scheduled for the end of this month. And in support of that, also we've formed a construction work group team, and I think we convened first time yesterday or the day before to go through constructability review of the bid documents so that we can minimize any issues with bid and subsequent construction that sometimes can be encountered on projects of this magnitude. Our consultant that was hired to perform asbestos and lead testing for some of the structures that are to be removed as part of the levee project. They performed some of that initial testing in the first group of structures, and we're coordinating with our consultant to do some additional testing on some other structures in support of the demolition process. Moving on to the Village Parkway South construction. As of January 1, we're at 47 working days on that project. But as we've been experiencing some well-needed rain, the project has met with intermittent delays due to weather. But some of the activities that are underway, weather permitting, includes some drainage culvert installation, rock slope protection, stormwater BMP maintenance, and will be also, the grading between Gregory Avenue and Davis Road is just about complete, and culvert installation is continuing north of Davis Road. And based on the current schedule, we expect over the next 4 weeks that the contractor will continue with roadway and ditch grading, some additional drainage culvert installation, and then also hopefully begin placement of aggregate base along Village Parkway between Gregory and Davis, as well as some of the access roads in that particular area. Utility relocation is progressing as part of the project. PG&E has finally completed their easement exhibits needed for the relocation, and they're working on finalizing the compensability review. Once that's complete, it'll be reviewed by staff and legal for concurrence, and we'll be bringing an item back to the board for approval. Once that's done, it'll allow for the construction of utility relocation work to begin. North area project closeout, staff is submitting a final accounting packages to the state for review. Once they're approved, then the last remaining approval process will be for review of the survey work for conformance with state standards. And we'll be really close to North area project closeout at that point. On the general reevaluation report, as Board Member Ramos pointed out and reminded us, the Civil Works Review Board was held back in December 8th, back in Washington, D.C. It was a huge success. There was a lot of work done by the entire team, core district staff, state support, locals, in getting that package together and to present our project to the board. We had some skepticism about presenting our project in tandem or in concert with the Common Features project, but actually it worked out, I think, to both projects' advantage. As Mr. Amos pointed out, the core is, although the project study guidelines require that we look in our geographical areas on benefits and cost ratios, they really are concerned about how they work together in the system, as we both share a common river system. You know, how do these projects work together as part of an overall regional approach? So having the projects presented and described together at the same board for their review was tremendously helpful for them and put this region in a better context for them and allowed them to understand what we were trying to accomplish and see the necessity of what we're doing, and ultimately led to the approval of both our project and the other one, the Common Features Project. And one of the items that was pointed out during that review process, and a lot of the praise that we received specifically in West Sacramento, was our public outreach efforts. The work that we do every year for the last 10, 15, 20 years on education, outreach, emergency preparedness. We were able to present and tell the story of what we do here in West Sacramento, and that went a long ways towards giving assurances to headquarters that not only are we looking at the structural improvements to protect our system, but some of the non-structural things that we need to be doing, like emergency preparedness, and what do we do in case, because there's no 100% guarantee. So they were really complimentary to our efforts, and went so far as to say that they wish the rest of the nation would follow our lead. So that was some really good feedback that we heard from headquarters, and we got great support. Congresswoman Matsui spoke on behalf of both projects in the region. We had great support from the state, both Central Valley Flood Protection Board staff and DWR management spoke on behalf of our project and the Common Features Project, and the mayor spoke, board member Ramos spoke. So it was really a regional team effort, and it was a huge success. So we're very proud of the work that everybody did. So next step on that process is the chief's report scheduled for April of 2016. I just received notice yesterday from district staff that they're getting ready to publish in the Federal Register the final EIS and EIR, and also the final report for a 30-day public review. So we're about 30 days away from wrapping those up, and then then we'll start the official agency review period, which goes for about 30 to 60 days. And so we're on our way to getting that chief's report back in front of the ASA's office in April of this year. Good. So good news. On the problem identification report and alternatives analysis update, we're continuing to meet biweekly with our project team. The draft problem identification report was received to staff on the 15th, which is currently under review. Our comments will be back to the consultant end of this month for them to finalize, and we also anticipate the draft alternatives analysis to be presented for our review in the first week of March. On public relations activities, Crocker & Crocker wrapped up the last of the 2015 Flood Preparedness Week outreach activities. As the board is aware, we had the poster contest, and one poster was selected as the poster contest winner. That poster, along with the student, was presented with an award at the December 16th City Council meeting. It's always fun to be able to recognize the young ones in our community in that public forum. So that was a nice event, nice evening. And then also we're developing a copy for the winter newsletter, which should go out here in the next couple of weeks. Let's see. Oh, and the last thing is we're working on with Crocker & Crocker, a draft communications plan for the upcoming levee work. So we want to start making sure that we are doing our outreach in advance of some of those construction activities, which is obviously going to be a big deal. And I think that's about all I'd like to point out. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Don't forget the front cover of the
yes.
audit. That was the item that was selected to represent it.
That poster got good press all over the place.
Pardon?
So the poster received good press in many different ways.
It's kind of neat, really. Let's see. Do you have anything else?
No.
There be nothing further. The meeting's adjourned.